Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank all of you for attending today's webinar, Identifying Return on Investment for Your GIS Program. This webinar is part of our educational webinar series for our Spatial IQ for MapGeo program at Sanborn. We've hosted almost 20 of these webinars now, and we have a very large library collection of all of the webinars that we've done. We will share a link at the end of this presentation, so you can go see all of those past recordings. And once this one is ready, this is obviously being recorded. So once this has been recorded, it will be sent out to everybody that registered for the event, and it'll also be put into our library. So before we get started, some logistics. Everybody is currently in listen-only mode. There is a Q&A chat box and a chats section at the bottom of the Zoom panel. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, please throw them in there. We will answer all of those at the end. And let's get started. So our speakers today, I think most of you are familiar with me, but my name is Rebecca Davis. I'm a project manager within the AppGeo division. I focus on local government, mainly on Connecticut and Rhode Island municipalities. And I've been with Sanborn almost 10 years now. Michelle?
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Giorgiani. I'm the Director of Consulting Services, and I am also in the AppGeo division with Rebecca at Sanborn. And I focus on everything.
Next slide. All right, so before we get into the good stuff, just want to share some of the benefits of the Spatial IQ for MapGeo program for those who are not familiar with it. Spatial IQ is a managed services program that's designed to help you get the most out of your MapGeo subscription. MapGeo is an online GIS platform that we have been hosting, and it's one of our products for 20 years, close to that. So it's a long time product. We have over 100 clients all throughout the country. The idea of the program is to help you keep your foundational data update maintained, including your parcels, easements, zoning, all that fun stuff. We also provide GIS help desk support. So if you have a question and you're working on something and you're just like, oh, I know that there's a way to get this done. How do I do this? Just give us a call. We'll help you out. We also have hosted downloadable data available on MapGeo. So if you are constantly getting requests for parcels or streets or any most common data on MapGeo, you can have that be available as a download, either available to the public or just behind a login for town staff to distribute. We also provide an annual overlay theme on MapGeo of our choosing, unless we get any requests from clients. So the bottom right screenshot is our crash incidences that we had put on MapGeo a couple of years ago, and it's showing you different crash accidents within your municipality and throughout the state. And we also offer strategic planning sessions, and that is on our building tier and above. So we have a couple different tier levels. So depending on what tier, you get additional benefits. And certainly we also offer these webinars. So what are we going to cover today? So we're going to be talking about ROI, or return on investment. So we're going to kind of talk about what that is. Going to go over some use cases, talk about the utility of investment, different quantifying benefits methods, and ways to present your findings. And we will end with the Q&A at the very end. So what is return on investment, or ROI? For short, you'll hear us use that acronym a lot. So ROI is basically a calculation that weighs the costs and the benefits of a decision. The costs and benefits can be direct, like money and space, or indirect, like time and experience. A true ROI is quantitative, so a measure of those costs and benefits. The ROI analysis can be applied to a specific initiative or program. We're going to be talking focused on the GIS side of things. So whether it's a GIS program or a GIS platform that your community is using, that's kind of the focus, as well as different types of things that can go along with that, such as imagery studies. And what that impact is if you did not have those programs in place. So as long as your ROI is greater than 0, you're doing really good. So Michelle, a question for you. Who and what would do a return on investment study for their organization?
Right. So why would you do an ROI? Well, as luck would have it, unfortunately, sometimes your program or your initiative is going to be scrutinized when it comes time to decide whether to fund it. So ROI is a good way to help justify its value and prove that it's really worth the investment. You could also use it to help you prioritize a big list of projects if you're unsure if the effort for a particular project is going to be worth it. So I know everyone has limited time, and this could just help you justify saying no to a less worthwhile project when its ROI is compared against the ROI of other priority projects on your list. The other thing I want to mention about ROI is while it is quantifiable and where it's math and doing metrics, there are other like non-quantifiable benefits that you could collect to supplement your quantitative study. And that would be like qualitative information, such as anecdotes and statements from your stakeholders about the value that they might feel that your program or project has provided to them, that is not necessarily measurable. So we're going to talk more about that as well later on in the webinar.
All right, so let's talk about some identifying some costs and quantifying those. So what are some types of costs? You're going to have your hardware, such as your computers, your plotters, any GPS equipment, things like that, your facilities, whether it's your office, or a vehicle for transportation to get to different on-site things in the field, the development of the data itself, licensing and software, your staff and any consultants that you might be using for that particular project or program, as well as doing any training that's needed, and then maintaining that data as well going forward. So those are your costs. So then let's look at the benefits. So things like identifying the increased revenue, you have your compliance, economic development. There's a whole lot more that can go into that, but high level economic developments, avoiding going out into the field to save that time and expense, increase productivity for staff, having things right at their fingertips, not needing to go into some scary basement vault or anything like that. Integrations with other business systems to try have that one-stop shop for everything that you need, and the reduction of consulting services for pre-assessment and different things like that. So some benefit examples. The idea is focused on having that GIS program and having that online data available. In today's world, everything is digital, everything is electronic. Having everything at your fingertips is kind of the most and obvious incentive and program that a lot of communities have nowadays. So being able to access that data online. You could have as much or as little information available, again, out to the public or just for internal staff, both of which are extremely beneficial to have. People are able to do quick searches on a property instead of having to take the time to go to town hall, ask the questions, ask the right questions, find the right people, potentially create an abutters list, and so on. All of those things are time consuming. To be able to have that at your fingertips makes it super easy and accessible. And it's also 24/7 support. So if you're looking for something after town hours, you have that availability. The maintenance of the data, you have your standards and compliance for permitting, but you also want to be able to keep the data that you've put online up to date. If you're not keeping things up to date, it's not going to be reliable and people aren't going to want to use it. So being able to maintain those is going to increase the benefit of your program and to your initiative. And then empowering your staff as well. They're able to create their own maps, do their own verification of ownership, plan out projects, and plan out future development. And they're able to answer questions super quickly, again, right at their fingertips, 24/7. So making the business use case. So now that we kind of have all the pieces, let's kind of put those together. So your first step is you want to identify the goal. So what is the problem that needs to be solved? What are you trying to answer? Then you're going to do your analysis. You're going to identify your costs and your benefits and compare them. And to identify those benefits and costs, we're going to go into those a little bit more, but you can go down some major rabbit holes to identifying all of those. So within your goal, you want to set some strict parameters so you're able to kind of put a cap on that so you don't go into all those rabbit holes. And then lastly, you're going to present your findings, both the qualitative and the quantitative benefits to your stakeholders and the decision makers as a cost benefit analysis. And then we're going to talk about additional ways on how you can do those presentations. But the biggest thing, we have a quote down there from a smart person, and it's really just saying that know who your audience is, make them want to hear what you're trying to pitch to them, to get their interest and approval on it. All right, so enough with the mumbo jumbo. Let's get into hearing from you guys. Let's start the audience poll. Bear with me. And launch. All right, so there should be a pop-up on everybody's screen. There are 3 questions. We want to hear from you if you've ever completed an ROI analysis within your community. There is a small chat where you can fill in your answer for what was the initiative, and then did the initiative and ROI help you justify the investment to your decision makers? So we'll give folks a minute to submit their responses to that, and then we'll be able to see those afterwards.
Is it working?
Yes, it is working. All right, we've got 80% participation. So I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results. So everybody should be seeing that. Let's see. We have 87% saying no, they have never conducted an ROI study for their community. So that's a little bit interesting. I thought there'd be a little bit more yeses. Let's see, to view what people have put in. Enterprise license agreement was one of the initiatives. Additional imagery, such as obliques, was an option. Implementing ArcGIS Notepad server. Turned out the ROI was too low. Oh, that's very interesting. Use of assessment management asset management software, and another enterprise GIS program. And then our last question, did it help you? For those that did complete it, 38% yes. It did help justify that to decision makers. So great. That was really helpful, guys. Thank you.
I'd be interested if we have time at the end for the people that said no, it didn't help, to understand why. What do they think could have gone differently, so that maybe there's some lessons learned there for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, ready to move on?
Yes. Yeah, so we're going to talk about some use cases. So our first use case is for MapGeo. We have this for the town of North Haven, Connecticut, and this was their stats for the year of 2023. So I want to make some general statements before I get into the math and get into some numbers. So this is a super, super, super simplified example of an ROI for their MapGeo product, for their MapGeo program. We're only looking at 3 very specific activities for searching, printing, and abutters, and we're comparing that to if they did not have MapGeo and what those savings would be. So that's the number that we're going to be looking at. So to start off, we had some general assumptions that we made. So for searches, again, searches are very general. So any search potentially could be an owner search, could be a property search, anything like that. We assume that it would take somebody at the town 2 minutes to complete without MapGeo. Printing 5 minutes each, and creating an abutters would be 20 minutes. So looking at the searches, total for the year, they had about 78,000, and taking it that at 2 minutes each, that was about 2,617 hours. And for printing, we had almost 2,000 printing requests, and that would equate to 163 hours of staff, and creating an abutters is almost 76 hours total. So all of that totaled together is 2,856 hours. So if we make the general assumption that a staff member at the town of North Haven makes $20 an hour, that's going to be greater than $57,000. So the costs avoided by having MapGeo and the MapGeo subscription for them is $3,500. So the math and the numbers alone, just looking at them, you know that this is going to be a positive return on investment. So doing the math on the right-hand side, we have our net benefit. So that is our total cost. Then we have we have our net benefit, which is the cost that was saved by the town, then the minus the MapGeo subscription, and then divided by the cost itself of MapGeo, so the 3,500 is a ROI of 1,528 as a percent. So what does that mean? So for every dollar that the town spent on having MapGeo, they can expect a gain benefit of $15. That was a lot. Michelle, do you have anything you want to add into that?
Everybody loves math. It's super interesting. No, but it's really helpful to break it down like this. You did a great job explaining that. I followed along. I just would like to say that when you are doing an analysis like this, it's really key to make a note of your assumptions. Like Rebecca, she said 2 minutes each, 5 minutes each. We're assuming that it could be a lot more time that it might have taken someone to do that. It could be less, but as long as you state what your assumptions are and you describe your methodology, you have something to back up your results with.
Yeah, going back to that comment for the printing, if the town had, say, a desktop software on their computer where they can have a template and it's super easy to just print a map, that's going to take them 5 minutes. But if they have to go into a basement and try to find a map, and God forbid they have to stitch multiple maps together, that's going to be much more time consuming than just the 5 minutes. So we went very conservative on our numbers for our estimates, but again, it already showed a very positive ROI.
Right. Right.
So where did I get all of these numbers from? So we have different stats that are being calculated on MapGeo. So depending on what tier level of MapGeo you have, you're able to see those stats directly within the MapGeo dashboard. So just go into the general tab once you're signed in and just go to site usage, and you're going to be able to see all of these stats popping up. These are going to be calculated. And if you don't have access to the dashboard and you're interested, certainly send us an email. But at the very minimum, you are going to be receiving a monthly, on the first of the month, a PDF of your web stats for the entire month to your email. And we send those out every single month. We've been doing that for a very long time. But the image on the right is a sneak peek of an additional thing that we're going to be providing that kind of shows the ROI itself of having MapGeo. And again, it's all being fed by the same stats that are being used for MapGeo. So again, we're making some assumptions very similar to what we made for the North Haven example. You're going to take certain assumptions of it's going to take a staff member X amount of minutes to complete task whatever at a certain rate. So that is how all of these are being calculated. You're going to see the time savings at the staff level and at the constituent level. So we kind of took those totals and just kind of separated them into the two categories, and that's where those numbers are coming from. So sneak peek, it might change a little bit, but you will be getting those in the very near future in the upcoming months. So
Very
that was,
exciting.
yeah, so that was my last use case. So Michelle, take it away.
All right. All right. Bear with me. Don't focus on the numbers yet. So Rebecca's example was really specific to the MapGeo platform, but that thought process can be applied to any other online GIS platform, and it can also it can be used for other programs, other initiatives, or your office or program as a whole, depending on how far you want to go with it. So to that respect, earlier this year, we did a study, we being Sanborn, did a study for the Indiana Geographic Information Office on the value and benefits of the work that that office does. So much of the following examples comes from that study. So here on the screen, you can see an example where we are showing just some of the ROI of Indiana's statewide imagery program, which is on a 4-year cycle. So I want to caveat that this is really just looking at cost savings that the office is providing to state agencies and counties. It is not accounting for a full buildup of every potential benefit that this program might be generating across all potential stakeholders. You could take it to that level. Once we see the numbers, the results here, kind of shows that you don't really need to. But it's good to know that, you know, you could go deeper with this if you want. So I'm going to walk through the process. First, we need to identify the costs that were avoided or the savings that the office is generating for counties and state agencies, otherwise known as the benefits. So starting with the counties, their costs avoided or their savings can be calculated if we assume an average county area is the size of 400 square miles. So with that assumption, we would say that the cost every 4 years for a county to buy the imagery on their own might be $85 per square mile times that 400 square miles. So that would equal about $34,000. So for a county, every 4 years, $34,000 at $85 per square mile. So then if we expand that out statewide, there's 90 counties in Indiana. So for all 90 counties total for every 4 years, we'd multiply that 34,000 times 90 to get 3,060,000. So now we need to break that down into an annual cost statewide for all the counties. So we take that $3 million, we divide that by 4, and that gets us $765,000 per year of costs avoided or savings or benefits, whatever you want to call it. So that's for the counties. For the state agencies, slightly different approach. So at the time of the study, Indiana was spending about $52 per square mile to acquire statewide imagery on the 4-year cycle. That was the deal that they got for their program for doing that 4-year program statewide. So if we assume that the cost without this program would be $85 per square mile, then at a minimum, we can make an assumption that the office is saving anyone that's using this program, this orthoimagery program, saving them $33 per square mile from having to buy it themselves, basically. So if the state is approximately 36,400 square miles, the savings of $33 per square miles times the size of the state, 36,400 square miles, is about $1.2 million every 4 years. So then to calculate the annual savings, so we're getting everything on that annual plane, we divide that number by 4 and getting an annual cost savings of $300,300 due to having the aerial imagery program for a state agency. So mind you, this calculation is assuming one purchase. So really one state agency in theory, and we know that there are many state agencies, but for this exercise, we're going to go with that assumption because we would like to assume that there would not be any duplication of effort in a state and that only one state agency would buy statewide imagery anyways. So with that assumption, we have our assumptions stated, we have our methods defined and documented, and we can determine that we have the annual savings or benefits to the counties of $765,000 and to a state agency of about $300,000. Hope everybody's with me. Okay, so now that we have those numbers for the savings, we need to understand the cost that the office is paying annually for that imagery. So we know their cost is $52 per square mile. The size of the state is 36,400 square miles. So then the 4-year cost is going to be $1,892,800. I said that wrong. 1.8 million. So then to get their annual cost, we divide that by 4 to get the $473,000. So their annual cost is $473,000 for that statewide imagery program. So now we know the savings and we know the cost. We can calculate the ROI. So to do that, we take the savings for the county and the state agency, that's 765 and 300,000. We add them together. We subtract the costs to the office, which is the 473,200, and then we divide that by that cost. So we're dividing that net benefit by the cost, and that gives us an ROI ratio of 1.25. In other words, 125%. So this is a positive ROI. It's a good one, and therefore it is a sound investment. And to make it even more compelling, we need to understand that this analysis is strictly the cost to buy the imagery. It doesn't include the cost for each county or state agency doing their own procurement, which we all know is a very lengthy and time-consuming process. It doesn't account for having the staff and the infrastructure to do that procurement and contracting, the storage of the data, the hosting, the publishing, the serving, etc. So this is a pretty conservative ROI estimate, and it focused just on the cost. But purpose is to give you an example and to kind of break it down and show you how to actually do the math. All right, so recently, Sanborn, we presented on a strategic planning webinar and about ROI through the NSGIC webinar program. NSGIC is the National States Geographic Information Council. They have an ongoing webinar program. I'm going to play a short snippet from Kate Hickey. She's Sanborn's Chief Operating Officer, and she's going to talk about two broad approaches for doing an ROI analysis. And hopefully this starts in the right. Nope, it didn't. Okay.
I mean, in terms of ROI, I think, again, it depends on if you're looking at trying to quantify the value of a very narrow initiative, like an investment in a data set, or a broad initiative or broad program. So if it's a narrow initiative, an ROI, let's just use imagery as an example, would be looking at, you'd be talking with stakeholders, this is the intensive research part, and saying, okay, without this imagery, how many hours a week would you be spending, doing field work, or, driving around the state to collect this type of information, or spending, how much would you, if you're talking to a local government, for example, how much would you be spending on imagery to purchase it yourself? So I think it's getting at things that can be quantified. So hours, it is a data set or a tool. Is it reducing the number of hours required to perform a task? Or is it increasing revenue? Often we'll talk with tax assessors, and they'll say, with imagery or with parcel data, we are able to locate properties that are not being taxed or not being properly taxed, and it can increase our revenue X number of dollars. That's kind of a bottom up, where you're like collecting use cases hour by hour, dollar by dollar. Top down would be looking at an overall program and saying to a public safety organization, how is imagery allowing you to having a direct impact on your ability to respond in emergencies? And is that response rate saving lives? And then you're getting into, impossible to do, but the value of human life within a state, and that you're getting into big topics, but you're understanding and making a case for why the geospatial information is critical for so many people across the state to just perform the work that is essential to operating on a daily basis.
So at a very high level, those previous examples that we showed, they could be categorized under a super simplified bottom-up approach that Kate was just talking about. And now I'm going to turn to an example of more of like a top-down style approach. And that is, it's this concept of utility of investment. And this concept comes from the study of economics. And we did apply this concept to the Indiana Geographic Information Office as another way of proving the value of the work that they're doing. So in this example, we calculated the benefits that geospatial is provided by the office, and used the gross domestic product, the GDP, that was reported by the state for the major economic sectors of Indiana, and those that we think could be credibly supported by geospatial. So we took this very conservative 1.1% factor and assigned that to the 2022 GDP values to estimate the impact of support from geospatial data and technology. So of course we had to do research to come up with that 1.1 number. How do we pick that number, right? Our research actually revealed that there are higher estimates, some nearly 10% for the impact of geospatial on these types of economic sectors. So we went really conservative with 1.1%. And so basically just, taking 1.1% for each sector's GDP to calculate a value, totaling that all up, we came up with um, uh, over $4 billion of economic impact or utility across Indiana's highest grossing sectors. And that would, from geospatial data and technology. So, we are assuming too that these benefits are both potentially direct and indirect and would include all geospatial activities in the state. But much of that is coordinated by this office, the Geographic Information Office, and by the Geographic Information Officer, who has a statutory responsibility to do that. So if we now take that a step further, and if we want to calculate the ROI from that, or the value of using this information, we would divide the value of the utility of investment to the Indiana economy by the cost to operate the office, and we have that $4 million that I was just showing on the other slide. And in another part of the project, we had estimated the cost of the office at around 4.6 million per year. So we're looking at an annual time frame. So therefore, if you do the math and you do the division, the IGIO is providing utility to the Indiana economic sectors valued at $857 for every dollar of the cost of the office. So it's just another way of describing the value. We could turn that into a percentage by multiplying 857 by 100. It's a really big number, a really big percent. So, but this is pretty compelling argument that the office is doing really good things. And this is math. Not everybody is a math person. So another way to show the utility of geospatial data and technology that's provided to each sector is to show the different geospatial data sets that the office provides that could support operational activities within each sector. So we built up this matrix and took some of the popular data sets that the office provides and marked off which ones could be used by each sector to perform their operations. And you can see there's a lot of X's on that chart. Each economic sector has several use cases for several geospatial data sets available through the office. So that just further validates. All right, so we're done with math. We're done with quantification. We're going to talk about qualitative benefits now. Basically, I just want to get out there that there are other ways to supplement your numbers and strengthen your case. You can study and document and share qualitative benefits that your program or project delivers. And doing that is important for several reasons. So the first is strategic decision making. Qualitative benefits helps provide insights into the effectiveness of your initiatives and can help guide decision making. Stakeholder engagement is important too. It can help in communicating the value of the organization's work to stakeholders, and that can support coordination and collaboration. Also, just the process of collecting the qualitative benefit information from your stakeholders engages them and drives them to think about benefits. So it's like a nice little cycle. Performance improvement is another reason for doing this. It can highlight areas that might need improvement by gathering that information from stakeholders. Similarly, innovation and growth. So you can get insights from qualitative benefits that spur innovation, and people may just share really good ideas that you would want to consider. It also helps with demonstrating impact, because you can demonstrate impact in tangible ways that might not include financial metrics, but could show how the work you're doing contributes to societal or environmental or economic outcomes, and that can enhance your credibility and reputation. And then finally, investment justification. documenting your qualitative benefits provides a practical resource that you can use to demonstrate the value of making improvements to your program when you're trying to build a business case for continued investment in a program. So we did this also for the Indiana GIO as part of their study. To do that, we performed interviews. We did about 12 interviews. We pulled out some selected quotes from the interviews, and we summarized themes we were hearing across the interviews. Similarly, in a survey we did, we had 73 responses. We also summarized the responses to the questions with our own commentary built into it. And we also pulled out some selected quotes from the survey. And then the office, the GIO, had been collecting some random statements here and there from people as they would naturally share them organically through working with the office. So we compiled those. And then we went back to our stakeholder outreach materials from the strategic plan project that we had done a couple years ago, and we gathered some more themes and quotes from that. And we compiled all of that qualitative stuff and quotes and themes and everything into a nice report to include with the value and benefits study. Here's a couple examples of things that came out of that from the survey specifically. The word cloud is a nice visual. It's reusable for many use cases. And the question on the right, that's showing that upwards of 40% of respondents agreed that the office benefits their organization in one of these ways. And these types of artifacts are really great for including in your qualitative benefits documentation, and also they could be reused in any other documents or for other purposes outside of the study. All right, next we're going to hear from Megan Compton. She's the Indiana Geographic Information Officer. And it was really funny because in that webinar that Kate was doing, they opened up the mic and asked the audience to chime in with any commentary. And Megan spoke up and she'd ad-libbed about the value that she's getting from that value and benefit study that we had conducted, which is where all these different examples came from. So I'm going to play that.
The value and benefit study that our office recently completed with the Sanborn NatGeo team is a total game changer for us. And that was a good example of the business plan that Kate mentioned. So one of the recommendations that came out of our strategic plan was to do a better job of talking about the value. We need to talk about what's the value. And we didn't want to talk about ROI because that's hard to do in government. And we didn't really have a longitudinal time. I didn't have years to do an ROI. I had a few months. So we did the values and benefits study. The team did an outstanding job. We talked about this a little bit at the NISTRIC mid-year meeting. But the amount of money that's invested in geospatial, so for every $1 invested in geospatial in Indiana, we see a $900 return on investment. And that's just one of those calculations that came out of that study. And I'm going to take that to some Senate hearings this fall. And because we have budget hearings coming up about why we should have funding and invest in geospatial. And these are easy talking points that are specific to our state. And I don't know that I can say enough about the importance of showing the value and the return, the utility of investment. Even though it's hard to calculate ROI, there are ways to calculate something. Quantitative review, qualitative review, and then there's a lot of scholarly archive or scholarly information out there on this as well.
We didn't pay her to say that, I promise. All right. So then finally, you have all of your information gathered, you've done some math, you've got your qualitative statements, you want to present your findings. And there's several different ways to do this, of course, and this is not the total universe here. But obviously, creating a traditional report and making it a PDF and sharing that out is common. That would probably be more used internally. It's more for people that want to really dig into the details, that want to understand your methodology, that might want to see what citations and sources you used to where you got your data from. It's also a good idea maybe to put it into a PowerPoint presentation because slides are reusable too. So you can create some slides and then like Megan had said, you could take snippets of that, bring it to a Senate hearing or a budget hearing meeting. So it's great because that's reusable for different audiences and reusable for different purposes. For the Indiana project, we did the report and then we also did a story map. So story maps are great. It's a, an Esri tool pretty easy to set up. And it's great for publicly sharing a story or, information. And it's not, we're not using it traditionally to show a bunch of maps. In fact, I don't even think there are any maps in the story map we created. But we use a lot of images, graphics, and text. And I can show you a quick example. Well, not an example, but I'll show you the story map itself. This is the story map we created. It's got different chapters in it for the different parts of the study that we did. I didn't talk about it yet here in this presentation, and I won't, but we did a value of open data study as well. It's more of like a literature review. There's the quantitative benefits study, and we studied their costs and some potential savings that they're creating, and we studied their qualitative benefits. So I think the qualitative benefits, we created this nice little carousel with some of the nice quotes that we had gotten from the various interviews and surveys, and people can kind of just scroll through those. So just an example of ways that you can share out your information. Go back into presentation mode and switch my
I
screen.
did share a link in the chat for everybody to go look and take a look at the story map that Michelle just shared. So if you have any questions on that before this webinar is over, certainly feel free to ask a question, or again, send us an email afterwards as well.
Oh, thanks, Rebecca.
Yep.
All right. So then we'll just wrap this up by just kind of, saying like, keep it simple and know your audience. Probably not a great idea to talk about all the technology and mention geodatabases and software and blah, 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 blah. Keep it specific. Statements like, if you fund this, you and your citizens will have 24/7 access to clear available maps that anyone can use. This project is going to fill 4 of the 8 steps for complying with this regulation. Or without this program, it would cost X more to accomplish this initiative. So taking the data that you're collecting and translating that into statements that your decision makers and the people that you're presenting the information to is gonna resonate with them. And that is all we have. So yeah, thank you so much for everybody for attending. And here's our contact information, our customer support portal, and our library of past webinars that Rebecca mentioned at the beginning. Do we have any questions?
We have one question, and I'm gonna let you answer this one, Michelle.
Uh-oh.
Is there a municipal GIS department ROI template or templates that Sanborn can share? Maybe like a software or hardware investment template.
I don't think I have a template. The example that we showed in the beginning, so you can get these slides and the recording and everything, but the example that Rebecca showed at the beginning with the MapGeo example for North Haven, you could use that as a template. Also, if you're a MapGeo, I'm not sure who the question came from, but
I don't know if I can see that.
if you're a MapGeo customer, as Rebecca mentioned, we are soon going to be sharing ROI reports with our monthly MapGeo usage statistics reports. And that's definitely a template that you could, make use of. But if you're a MapGeo customer, you're going to have it already. We're going to do it for you, so you don't really need to do it yourself. There might be some online. I would Google it.
We don't have one that we necessarily offer. So
Yeah.
that was from Aaron Vaughn. I can't see his contact information from within here, but Aaron, we can certainly reach out.
Yeah. We could do a project to create one.
Yeah, there is a raising of the hand as well. So Aaron, I can allow you to speak if you want to elaborate on that. See if this works. All right, if you want to unmute Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, well, it was a little early of a comment before you started going into like the solutions you're already showing, but I thought some kind of something that kind of equated to like a worksheet or some kind of an Excel thing, but I don't know how that goes about. I'm totally new to it, so That's kind of what I was going after.
Yeah, I think it you could provide a template, but it would have to be completely adjusted depending on what kind of data you can collect, because what are the benefits that your thing is generating? Well, we don't know every potential benefit that every
Yeah, I know.
potential thing, could generate.
Yeah.
So it'd be pretty difficult to create, a detailed template, but, in general, just applying, calculate, identify potential costs, identify potential benefits, try to quantify them in some way, and then, apply the formula. And there's your template. Add
Cool.
some qualitative statements in there.
Yeah, I know. It is case by case, and yeah, the devil is always in the details for sure.
Right. Yeah,
But no,
exactly.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Good
Thank you.
question.